Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this call in devotion to the master teacher plant of sacred tobacco. And my name is Robin, and this is I'm
Darcy.
Lovely partner, Darcy. And we are sanctioned teachers of the Pachacuti Mesa tradition. We are devotees of the sacred plant teachers, and we are students for life of Gaia, Sophia, Pachamama, and all of her beautiful spirits and powerful medicines. So to begin tonight, we'd like to open with a prayer, and then we'll dive into some of the beautiful teachings that Taite Siri, sacred tobacco, has blessed us with and has guided us to share with the larger community, really in the spirit of supporting us all to have a more conscious, benevolent, and deeply spiritual connection to this master teacher plant. So if we could all drop in to our hearts, take a few deep breaths to anchor and align to the earth below, the sky above, and the beautiful heart within. Ia tekse muyu, te tanchis were kocha, pachakamak. Holy Mother, Divine Father, Creator Creatrix of all that is. Thank you for this day. Thank you for our lives. Thank you for our good health. We honor the beautiful, powerful, sacred, living intelligence that is our Holy Mother Earth, our Father Sky, Grandmother Moon, Grandfather Sun, and the divine child that we each are. Thank you so much to this land where we are calling from, Crystal Mountain in the Kootenay region of British Columbia. And we honor all the Indigenous wisdom keepers and First Nations of this land, the Sinixt, the Tanaha, the Salix, and all whose names that we might not know or have been lost through time. We deeply honor you and thank you for the blessing of living here and reaching this wider global family, this soul tribe from this beautiful, beautiful land of Star River Sanctuary and Apu Crystal. And we honor all the spirits of the land here, the creepy crawlers, slithers, wingeds, finnids, two-leggeds, four-leggeds, standing Green Nation. And we ask for the blessing and empowerment to be clear channels to share the love, the wisdom, and the power of these sacred plant medicines and the sacred spirit within all of life. And we honor the guardians of this land and all the lands that each one of us is calling in from in this non-local circle of heart, of sincere desire to live in alignment and deepest honor and respect with all of life, and the sacred circle of learning and being students for our whole lives to the sacred plant medicines. And we honor as well all of the nature spirits, including the plant devas of the master teacher plants, which are all plants, and especially the master teacher plant and overlighting deva of sacred tobacco, Taite Siri, Mama Siri in Quechua. And we honor the great tree beings and the tree of life within. We honor all the beautiful ancestors of our lineages of practice and all the lineages that we'll be honoring in this circle from the beautiful land of Heart Island, South America, Serpent Island, Central America, and Turtle Island, North America. And we honor the sacred mountain spirits, the guardians of planetary medicine, and the beautiful river of stars above. And we honor each and every soul connected to this call, live or in recording, And we ask for the full medicine power of our collective unity and unique insight and diversity to be present. So this can be a co-creative ceremonial container for remembering not just the sacred dimension within this master teacher plan, but the sacred dimension within all of life. Ayu Masi Kanapa, we are all one family, all my relations.
Thank you, Robin. I'd like to call in the spirit of sacred tobacco and just call in the smoke of this beautiful ally. And feel free to receive the spirit of this tobacco through quantum space and time that's between us.
All right, well, that feels like a beautiful beginning. And yeah, this call was really inspired by each of our personal journeys with continuing to learn with the master teacher plans and being what we consider students and assistants of the plans. And so we recognize that on this call, many of you, if not all of you, already have a relationship with the sacred tobacco. And actually, on this call, there are some of our dearest elders and beautiful humans that we have sat in years of ceremony with, that we've learned so much from, and that really we wouldn't be here without, including in spirit the lineage holders of the Pachacuti Mesa tradition, Don Oscar Miracasada and Cindy Miracasada. And we're sitting for the first time in this larger international community, right with this altar mayor, this altar that has just recently journeyed through a rugged pilgrimage from the southeast of Florida, right at the corner of the Bermuda Triangle, actually, all the way to where we are in British Columbia. And so we're really honoring and in this time together, giving our deepest gratitude and praise for all the shoulders that we stand upon. Recognizing that we are here because we have been so radically supported, loved, seen, witnessed by these humans of such great heart and such great devotion, and that we wouldn't be here without the love of our elders and, of course, our families. And so we share this in honor of all of our mentors, our elders, our teachers, in human form, in spirit form, in plant form, in stone form, in all the forms, and the spiritual life that is supporting each of us and everyone in this call. And, we came to the way of the ceremonial path with the plants, both through different life experiences, but really just briefly to share for myself is that I became a student of this lineage and the ceremonial work with the master teacher plants because I had a severe chronic illness that couldn't be touched or even really diagnosed by Western allopathic medicine. And that brought me on a wild journey of really needing to become my own physician, really reclaim the power of my own choice and choices to create my life. And then also that guided me down to work with the beautiful wisdom traditions of the North Coast of Peru, the Washuma Corndorismo, our first mentor in this way, Don Howard Lawler, who's an ancestor now, and then into the wildly powerful and very awesome medicine ways of the Amazonian rainforest, with a beautiful mestizo ayahuasca lineage outside of Iquitos. And then from there, being able to have this really guided and wildly blessed path where doorways open for Darcy and I to be able to be in ceremonies from traditions from Heart Island and South America, including traditions with the Venezuelan Yopo medicine, which is known in the Andes as Wilca or Vilca. We've also then had the opportunity to be in Central American ceremonies with the peyote medicine and different plant medicines from that land, as well as beautiful wisdom traditions and ceremonial ways of Turtle Island. And having the opportunity to sit in sweat lodges and in nipis and pipe ceremonies, and these really beautiful hearts that were willing to allow us to not just come, but welcome us to their sacred altars for healing. And really through this path, I fully healed my body. And through that, what was a miraculous healing, then recognized that anything that had this level of efficacy was worthy of being a student for life. And while we are in a place of mentorship within the Pachacudi Mesa apprenticeship, and now through the sacred plant medicines, and we have plant spirit medicine apprentices working with us while they are apprenticing directly to the plant medicines through the path of soul power medicine, which is our shamanic leadership and sacred plant medicine apprenticeship program. We truly know in our heart of hearts that we are here to be the assistants, to be the students, and when asked, to share what we have learned and received from these medicines in a way that recognizes that we are truly always in a circle. And in this call, even though it's a non-local circle, we're all through the world, through different communities, that we are truly in a circle. And please know that we honor this circle and recognize that in this sacred circle, nobody is ahead and nobody is behind. Nobody is above and nobody is below. We are here together in honor of the sacred dimension of life. And thank you so much for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're doing
Why don't you start with that, and then
we have some notes just so that we can cover everything we'd like to. So we're calling in the sacred master teacher plant of tobacco, recognizing that this is actually the most revered plant of the Americas, within the ceremonial ways that we've experienced, the beautiful ceremonies from all of the Americas that we have just barely tapped into a small amount, although there's quite a few lineages that I voiced, and there's more that we've participated in, that through all the ceremonies, whether they're with other master teacher plants, other traditions, at the center of each of these ceremonies has the role of sacred tobacco has been very present and very revered. And in fact, tobacco is really the plant that unites all the different ceremonial traditions through the Americas. And it has a very deep history. So there are the most ancient archaeological sites where tobacco has been found are now over, it's now over 12,300 years old in a site called Wishbone in what's now Utah. And at this Wishbone site, there was seeds of tobacco that were found in a burn pit in an ancient fire site. And so tobacco has been harvested and cultivated throughout the Americas from at least 12,000 years ago. And as any, really revered plant or food, or even other necessity of life like salt, the trade routes formed around these most precious medicines and these nutrient foods or nutrient substances that we really need to thrive as humans. And tobacco within the Americas has always had a sacred dimension of practice. There is a connector, as a communicator, as a way that the people gather in sacred circle. And there's multiple species from across the Americas that are worked with, including Nicotina rustica, which is also known as mapacho or Aztec tobacco. And this is one of the strongest forms of tobacco. And if you've ever had a chance to smoke mapacho from the South American jungles or from the Aztec or Mayan lands, this tobacco is so strong that you really can't inhale it. It has like 7 to 10 times more nicotine and other medicinal alkaloids than the more common tobacco or North American tobacco. There's also tobacco plants that have been harvested actually up here in BC. Some of the most ancient strains of tobacco were actually cultivated and found in the Pacific Northwest. And so the people in this area have been working with it, especially as a smoke and a smoking herb, for thousands of years. And in all the traditional indigenous practices, they have been working with this plant connected to spirit. And maybe I can turn over to you the shamanic and earth honoring traditions.
Yeah, it seems that, so many of these indigenous traditions that we've studied all hold tobacco as one of the central plant spirits with deep honor and reverence. And, it's so beautiful that these traditions have been able to maintain and create the relationship of this very powerful plant that in the West and the modern world, we've in a way forgotten the incredible, extraordinary spiritual nature of this plant. It has gone from something as sacred as it could be to something that is destructive. And it's interesting that in our tradition, the Pachacuti Mesa tradition, we honor 3 plants, 1 plant for each of the different Americas. One being tobacco for North America, very sacred for the people of North America. And then South America, very, very sacred is corn and the corn spirit and the corn plant. And in South America, very revered plant is the coca leaf. And we work with all 3 of these when we work with the consecration of our underneath our mesa ground, and we're honoring all the ancestors of these traditions of these areas. But the interesting part is that all 3 of these sacred plants have been, reversed in its sacredness, right? It's been, desecrated. That's the word. Desecrated to its maximum, literally. In North America with tobacco, instead of being a sacred plant of healing, of protection, of cleansing, of deep connection to source consciousness, of connecting to the creator and creatrix. It's been changed into something that's addicting and that actually takes your life force and takes your free will. And then in Central America, you have corn, the sacred plant of corn, which is then again twisted a little bit and turned into high fructose corn syrup, right? Which is mass produced. It's put in all drinks and food and fast food. And then that is, instead of being a healing plant, a plant of connection and health, it is then brought into the realm of creating more disease and unhealth and diabetes, right? And this very similar thing happened to the coca leaf, is where Mama Coca is this powerful, powerful, beautiful plant spirit of the Andes. And so many of the native people and the indigenous traditions there hold it so sacred and work with it every day for their connection to the mountains and the nature spirits and the spirits of the land. They work with it for helping with altitude sickness and with nutrition. But then modern culture has then again distorted it into cocaine, which is then almost the opposite. It is, instead of great health, it's a great unhealth. And we feel it's important. One reason why we really felt that it's important to talk about this, because it's important that we understand the roots of these plants and that we can recover the sanctity, the medicine, the spiritual nature of these plants. And we just don't totally bypass the extraordinary nature of these plants and just throw the baby out with the bathwater and see all these plants as a negative, because it's really all about how we create relationship with these plants, how we honor these plants, how we bring them into our lives. And so we can recover the sacred relationship we have with these plants, because they are so powerful, so powerful. And in a way, it's our responsibility to recreate that relationship. And so these plants, I'll talk about tobacco. It's been used for thousands of years, like Robin spoke about, in a very honoring way, in a way that really strengthened the relationship that these people had with the spirit realm. And many of these traditions talk about like how tobacco is used to create this direct line to creator. It's like I've heard them say, like, it's like having a walkie-talkie to God. Like, it has this profound nature to be able to move through the many dimensions, to be able to contact the higher realms and the realms of spirit and the realms of nature. And so we're getting into what we see as, earth honoring animism, right? Which is also called shamanism these days. But another term is earth honoring animism, where we realize and we understand that everything is alive. Everything has spirit. Everything has consciousness. And we can create relationship with all those many layers and levels of spirit, because everything is alive and awake. And so this is shamanism. Shamanism is all around the planet, all through the planet. It's the oldest form of spirituality on the planet. 60, 80, 100,000 years old. It's very, very old. It's probably much older than that, because what we see is shamanism and animism happens when you have humans that live in nature, that are surrounded by landscape and the spirits of nature and the spirits of landscape, and there's earth underneath them and there's sky above them. And so shamanism just is a natural evolution of how humans interact with their environment all around them. And so shamanism is in all continents, maybe not Antarctica, but most of the continents around the world, most areas around the world, they're very similar attributes to all these shamanic traditions, but they're all also very unique in their expression. So you would have in the Amazon, you'd have a different form of shamanism because they're surrounded by plants and trees. Then you'd have in the Australian outback, because it's a different landscape. There's different spirits, there's different plants, there's different animals. So there's a different form of shamanism that evolves. And so many of these traditions in North, Central, and South America have evolved with tobacco, because tobacco grows naturally. And eventually these traditions which find tobacco and realize the extraordinary nature of its spirit, of how it connects us, how it deepens our relationship with nature. It acts as a pathway of Aini, or sacred reciprocity. It helps bring cleansing into ceremonial fields. And then also it can help to heal illnesses and disease. So this is in the context of shamanism or in earth honoring animism, how tobacco would be brought in.
Thank you. Just want to double check if there's any chat that we need. Oh, great. Okay, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and really with this conversation, as we begin with the earth honoring indigenous wisdom that has been so beautifully and kindly shared with us, and we really recognize the gift of this, and we recognize that what we have been able to learn has been kept alive really by incredibly strong and resilient human beings that have encountered so much adversity. And so we want to honor all of the strength and the wisdom, and recognize that without the Indigenous First Nations communities really keeping their ceremonies alive, even under threat of death, even under threat of imprisonment, even under the pressures of cultural genocide, that we are now able to receive these ancient wisdom ways around tobacco. And we are grateful for this gift, and we honor just how much reconciliation there still is for all of us to participate in. And we also pray that this call can be in honor and in devotion and dedication to that greater reconciliation between all peoples. Because tobacco as a master teacher plant, honored as the healing plant of the Amazon. Like in the Amazonian traditions, the visionary plants of Mama Ayahuasca, Chacruna, Toé or Datura, Yopo, Vilca, just to name a couple, were all seen to be catalysts to open up inner sight, to open up shamanic sight, so that the practitioner or the shaman, the medicine person, could have the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and the heart to feel where the dis-ease was in the member of their community that they were helping or treating. And then the spirit of tobacco and the applications of tobacco in a number of ways that we're going to address was actually the master healing plant. And, we've been really sitting with this teaching as some of this new science or modern science that we'll be speaking about in a little while has been coming to light, because once again, the indigenous wisdom ways have known this for a very long time. And, modern science or new science is just catching up. But what is lost even in the modern perspective is the spirit, and how within traditional practice, there's no separation between the plant medicine and the plant spirit. They're one and the same. And so when we're working with sacred tobacco as a master teacher, we're working with the spirit of tobacco, the overlighting deva, the pure medicine consciousness that is emanating through the morphogenic field within all of the tobacco species. The big spirit of sacred tobacco. And then through that spirit, working it to create pharmacological applications of the whole plant for healing. And within the spiritual connection to tobacco, what's so important, like critical to bring into our consciousness and our hearts, is that nothing goes one way. And so really this understanding of Aini, or sacred reciprocity, or the way that when we are actually in this great web of life and the living animate spirit of creation and the living animate spirits of nature, that the energy that we put out is the same energy that comes back to us. And this is known through all the world's wisdom traditions. This idea, this understanding of sacred reciprocity, that nothing goes one way. In the pagan traditions, this is the understanding that anything you put out energetically, or any like karma or action that you express through the creative energy that you are, will come back to you times 3. Or in the Christian traditions, what you sow is what you reap, or what you reap is what you sow. And it goes on and on and on. But really, when we're working with Tete Siri as a spiritual plant, the spiritual unique medicine that is cross-cultural throughout all these beautiful traditions, these strong and powerful medicine ways, is that tobacco helps to amplify our intentions and our current state of consciousness. And so to work with tobacco, to work with it and to bring it into ceremony, is to align ourselves with very clear intention to what we are praying for, what energy we are calling out and then calling back. And so traditionally, say with the North American wisdom traditions, with the Chanupa, or the sacred pipe, Chanupa, that word is from the Lakota, Dakota traditions, but the sacred pipe medicine is very cross-cultural. But it's this understanding that you unite the masculine and feminine, the pipe, the stem being the masculine, the bowl being the feminine. You create a sacred union. You unite yourself. The pipe is symbolic of you as well. So you're uniting the sacred polarities of creation. And then through tobacco and that unification that's within, and that you're symbolically empowering in your ceremony, then those prayers go straight to the heart of Creator. And so, as we've been taught, it's very important to be really conscious and actually a bit careful about what we're praying for. Because to be in pure medicine and to be in alignment to divinity, alignment to love, alignment to the benevolence of creation, our prayers must be clear and true. And also, they can't trespass upon another person's free will, or that moves us into a different type of working with consciousness, even any of the master teacher plans, which we're not really going to dive into, but in some traditions is known as brujeria. It's using our intention to cross another person's free will. And we can do this with really good intentions. We think we know what our family member needs in order to be happy, to be healthy, to be whole. But even that, if we're praying for a specific outcome, even for ourselves and especially for another, then we're out of alignment with the greater divine flow of creation. So this level of consciousness and respect is embedded within the pure medicine traditions all across the world. And then with tobacco is like supremely emphasized because it's very powerful. And traditionally, it's only been worked with very moderate use, very moderate, like it's not, nobody's smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, in that place. It's worked with very consciously and with great moderation because there's healthy respect for the power of this plant. Because any true medicine plant, as is known across the world's traditions by herbalists, by medicine people, and even in the teachings of Hippocrates and Paracelsus, that the difference between medicine and poison is in dose. And so the healthy respect with tobacco really needs to be forefront in our consciousness because it does have toxicity at certain doses. And that's just with the whole organic plant. But then we get into, the industrial commercial use of this and creation of, there's tobacco, but there's all these other chemicals infused in it. And then it becomes something highly, highly toxic. And so for some people, or actually before we get into that, what I want to just share around this consciousness piece is recognizing, and tobacco, the spirit of tobacco teaches each one of us how to be sovereign and very conscious within the creative power that lives within us. Because we are emanations of the universal intelligence, the creative power that builds the galaxies, the stars, the earth, that's within all of the living spirit of creation. And we are conscious emanations of that creative power. And so when we come into beautiful healing medicine relationship with tobacco, it helps us to awaken to our inner creative power, to structure through our prayers and our consciousness and our intention, the quantum field of life, and even the photonic light of creation. That's how powerful our consciousness is. And then tobacco amplifies that power. It amplifies it. So we want to be very conscientious and careful of what consciousness that lives within us that we're amplifying. Can
I just have a side note here? Mm-hmm. So yeah, what Robin's saying is that, tobacco is this amplifier of our prayers. It's been known about this for a long time in many of these other traditions, and it's powerful. It's a powerful amplifier. And then you take our modern culture again, and it still works when you're smoking cigarettes. That amplification still is in effect. But most people, when they're smoking, are not praying, right? They're likely in some other form of consciousness or anxiety or worry or, thinking negative thoughts. And those are getting amplified. And so that's why we have to be actually very careful when we work with tobacco, either in a sacred manner or not in a sacred manner. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, at the end of this live call, we will have time for questions. So we're just going to move through some other teachings and points, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end, because I'm sure there's a lot of questions brewing. And so this traditional understanding of working with tobacco as the master healing plant that amplifies our consciousness, amplifies our prayers, creates a direct line to source divinity, great spirit, whatever name you have for God, for that divine light, love of creation. Tobacco creates a direct line. And through this, when we are in our fully empowered love, can be a healing medicine that purifies, clears, harmonizes, and grounds. It purifies the dross. It purifies the foreign energies in our field. It releases the spirits of illness, of trauma, of shock, of harm. It moves in through the rivers of light, the rivers of life that are seen as, you could see that as our meridian system, but I love rivers of light. That's from the Amazon. And as it cleanses the rivers of light, then it moves through these impedimentas, these impediments, these energetic blocks, and also these blocks that in modern science, we have different words for. We have a different lens to, but it still works within the modern science Western lens. But without the spirit, we're missing a huge level of power. So one of the interesting things that's come to light, especially in the last 5 years, is how research done on nicotine, which of course is in tobacco, has all these beneficial effects. Now, of course, to do any clinical research trials on anything, any alkaloid, the alkaloid from the plant first needs to be isolated through a chemical process, and then it's usually synthesized as well. So when we're talking about nicotine and the clinical research trials that have been done on it, we're talking about an isolated synthesized molecule that's in tobacco, but it's not the nicotine in tobacco, and it's not in the whole plant matrix. The synergistic plant intelligence that has evolved over 500 million years of Gaian intelligence, like the plant realm has. Where instead, taking a whole bunch of chemicals, taking a plant, taking a whole bunch of chemicals, isolating out the alkaloids, synthesizing those, and it's done by the pharmaceutical industry so that they can find a synthesized alkaloid that can be patented to create a pharmaceutical product that they can sell. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about nicotine. Is it tobacco? No. And is it in tobacco? It is, but even the nicotine that's used in this is like deviated on one level. It's not in its natural form. And yet this nicotine has been shown to have incredible benefits, which is great if you're a pharmaceutical company and you're looking to create products and looking to find different medicines, and there's benefit to it. And we honor that that's valid as well, even though we're kind of like whole plant advocates. So not to judge, but just to put out our perspective. So nicotine has been shown to soothe the nervous system. In fact, it activates both the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system simultaneously. One of our beautiful students, teachers, guides, one of the people in our plant spirit medicine hoop that we were just gathering with, she shared that one of her mentors apprenticed with tobacco for over 40 years in Amazonian tribes that would create these long pipes and have these big plugs of mapacho. And the tobacco shaman that would smoke the entire plugs, one after the other. And they needed to be really careful, because if you take too much tobacco, you can actually move into a coma and your heart stops and you die. And so to train with tobacco is to go through all these purifications with it and to build up the body's capacity to handle more and more and more. But it's a thin line, even with those who've apprenticed with this medicine for decades. But nicotine both soothes the nervous system, it calms and clears and aligns and is a relaxant, which is one of the main reasons it can become habit forming and addictive, is because it's actually soothing the nervous system every time you have tobacco or nicotine. She's like, oh, that's nice. That's a relaxant. If we don't develop our own intrinsic tools to self-soothe, and to calm and harmonize our nervous systems, then it's easy to become dependent on these very powerful plants to do that with for us. But that's one of the benefits of nicotine. It also enhances mood and cools down inflammation. And really, this capacity to clear inflammation is one of the reasons that it began to be explored for the treatment of long COVID. It's also been helped to treat depression, ADHD, and ulcerative colitis. So all these inflammatory conditions. And really with long COVID, do you want to speak to that actually?
Sure.
To the
Yeah, it's interesting science that's coming out. There's still lots of science needed with this, of course. Is what they're finding is that the spike protein will attach to these nicotine receptors, but nicotine itself is a much stronger connector to these receptors because they're nicotine receptors. And so they're finding for long COVID and for some vaccine damage that people that take nicotine patches, mostly nicotine patches or nicotine gum, that a lot of their symptoms will go away almost, very rapidly. And we've seen a number of people that this has actually worked with. And so especially people that they just can't kick that that long COVID, to try the nicotine patches, do your own research. It's just an interesting tidbit of how, nicotine can help even like virally. Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's interesting with viruses because, in a lot of ways, we could see from a shamanic lens, viruses as foreign energy entering the body system. And through this energy, this spirit, this intelligence, then moving into the cells, moving into the body, and then hijacking the cells to replicate more of the virus. And so it's interesting to me that tobacco has been traditionally worked with to clear the spirits, to clear the energies that are foreign and that do not serve our health and our vitality. And so this radical shift that a lot of people in our community have found for many inflammatory conditions, but especially with different viruses that create a very strong immune system response in the form of a cytokine storm, which is basically the immune system getting wildly activated. And a lot of the inflammation that we have where we just feel really sick or there's mucus or the glands are swollen or, it's like there's so many different ways that this can impact the body, but it's actually because the immune system's overreacting. And by having nicotine or the spirit of tobacco come in and actually begin to move that on a cellular level, move the viruses out and start to allow the natural cellular intelligence to come back online, well, people begin to feel better. And what's amazing with the reports that are happening with nicotine patches is that people start to feel better from like months and months and months or years of long COVID within 3 to 5 days. It's like, wow, I can start to think again. The brain fog has cleared. This incredible like dampening of my energy is beginning to evaporate. I'm able to feel more like myself again. Also, there's all sorts of other trials that have been done around how to work with different chemicals that are in tobacco that have anti-inflammatory properties, such as anandamide for autoimmune and neurodegenerative disorders. There's also places where tobacco has as a source of monoamine oxidase inhibitors, or MAOIs, which is also in ayahuasca and Syrian rue, some of the other master teacher plants. And this can actually help with depression, low mood, and all these sorts of like mood and addiction pathways. So while the clinical research is still not 100% conclusive, we're getting a lot of people trying this because nothing else was working and having some amazing benefits. But we definitely feel like the modern science is missing some in the plant wisdom, or not just a little bit in the plant wisdom, but quite a bit. Because, you know, with the medicinal application of tobacco, if we take anything or anyone, but we take a plant and then we break it all up, isolate it out, and try to find the one thing that does the healing, we're missing an incredible amount of evolutionary wisdom that is inherent in every plant matrix. But also, what I feel when I was listening to all these different podcasts and following up on this research, and people who are, you know, speaking a lot about this, like there's a man, Dr. Ardis, Ardis, who has really brought this out. A lot of people are talking about nicotine patches now. And we have a lot of friends who are, you know, finding nicotine patches and having that in their medicine bundle kit, their little medicine kit. And within all of this, I haven't heard anyone speaking about the spiritual dimension. And so for me, it's like, even when there is this benefit, and for some people, nicotine patches might be just the way to go, but we're missing an incredible power within this plant, which is to help us to reconnect to the sacred dimension of life. And so by having that like lens of the empire consciousness, the colonialization and commercialization of this plant, then we're actually still echoing out separation consciousness. And why work with one isolated alkaloid when we can work with a whole plant in its organic form and receive the benefits of this larger plant matrix? So that's really part of the inspiration for offering this call. We haven't heard this put together any other place, and we felt like it's a really missing part of the conversation. But in order to get into how we can work with this as an application in our lives in a conscious medicine way, we also have to acknowledge how a lot of tobacco out there is not medicine. A lot of what is sold as tobacco and cigarettes and chew and vaping and cigarettes is actually poison. It actually is. So maybe we can just touch on this and then we can move into the other applications of it.
Yep. I'm looking forward to question time. So we're going to try to move through this. Yeah, it seems like the commercialization, the industrialization of tobacco, you know, it's quite nasty, to be honest. You know, we're not talking about tobacco much anymore. We're talking about, you know, modern agriculture, growing tobacco with pesticides and fertilizers. You know, they're fermenting, the way they ferment is toxic. And then the amount they put in up to 7,000 chemicals into the cigarettes, right? So what is that? Is that tobacco? I don't see it as tobacco. I see it as some sort of abomination of tobacco. And so that has been, for the last 100 years or more, has been quite destructive on modern culture, or, you know, everywhere in the world, literally. And luckily our cultures are understanding that and seeing that, and there are less people smoking now. Thank God. You know, less people smoking that terrible tobacco light substance. Vaping's become quite common, and again, it's just nicotine. It's not working with the spirit of the plant. It's just this one isolated molecule or chemical, and then it's a very unregulated industry. And so the amount of stabilizers and flavoring that they put in is like not regulated at all. And they're finding that there's huge issues about that, lung issues. But it's because it's not regulated very well, it's just kind of just allowed to happen. And so we're not a big fan of vaping, to be honest. It feels almost even worse than cigarettes. But yeah, those are, that's how things have moved over the last 100 years. And hopefully things will start to come back with this more understanding of the power of the tobacco spirit. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and also within, industrial tobacco products, there's over 600 different known toxins. When all those 7,000 chemicals between the herbicides, the pesticides, the flavoring agents, the stabilizers for the curing process, all of that comes together. We're talking about what is really toxic, and it's gross, and it smells gross, and it also is highly addictive. And it's the chemicals that are put into tobacco that are by far the most addictive substances within what we think of as like cigarettes or tobacco, but it's not the whole organic plant. Yet we would feel like we were, irresponsible if we were to just, not address this piece, because the process of moving from the desecrated consciousness of life to the sacred dimension of life, we have to look at actually how separation consciousness has created, from a profit-driven model, products that are incredibly harmful all across the board. And of course, there's like tons of information and movies and documentaries and so much about the tobacco industry and how it has intentionally and systematically created poisonous products that hook people very easily. And those same pharmaceutical and tobacco, large agro companies that are all one demigod corporation feast off of an intertangled web of illness, addiction, and then finding the solution in other isolated pharmaceutical products. So it's actually an amazing profit model. I mean, on one level, we have to really honor, like, wow, that's really well done. And so as we're beginning to work with tobacco as a ceremonial plant in traditional healing application process, what we are advocates of, and the only thing that we work with, and the only thing that we could, in good conscience, offer others to work with, is the whole organic plant worked with in different applications that are sourced from conscious intentional place, prepared with conscious intention, and imbibed or having the application in that same intention, because there's a lot of room for deviation here. And tobacco also teaches us how we can live in right relationship, and what living just a bit out, just a little bit deviated from that right relationship, or a lot, creates. Because we're always creating our reality. We're continually generating our experience of life. And our choice and our consciousness and our intention matters. It actually generates the matter of our experience. And so as we're working with powerful plant teachers, this becomes powerfully emphasized. And so we want to move into some of the applications and then still have time for some questions. But maybe we could move into this part. You want to speak about some of the different ways that...
Yeah, so there's many ways to work with tobacco. One of the easiest ways, and probably the safest way, is just to grow the tobacco plant in your garden and make relationship with that plant, how it grows, all the way from seed to flower. Harvest that plant, dry the leaves, work with that plant in ceremony for your offerings, offering to Pachamama and the earth and nature. So that's a really easy, beautiful way. And it's actually what we recommend for all of you to practice. It's a great way to attune to the power and to the spirit, that grandfather spirit of that plant. And then there's, also smoking. Many of these indigenous traditions will smoke tobacco in prayer. Many not inhaling, many with, working with the chanupa or the sacred pipes, or with mapacho, stronger types of tobacco. There's working with the smoke and then having the smoke go and take your prayer away. And so there's beautiful practice of, many people in our community have their sacred pipe that they work with, and they only smoke the best tobacco. They don't inhale, and they work with it for prayer. So that's one way. There's also nasal applications. So hape and rape have become, quite common, popular these days.
And that's a snuff, like a powdered tobacco snuff. Do you want to
speak more? So that's become very popular in the last 10 years. It's a type of tobacco usage from more the Amazonian traditions, different Amazonian tribes. And it's become very popular and it's mass produced now. We worked with it. I worked with it for a while, and it was very helpful, very purifying, very connecting. I did actually really like it. And then eventually I didn't really like the energetics behind it. I realized I didn't actually know who made this. I didn't know who made, what were the prayers, what were the plants that were they putting in, how careful were they with the production of it, how many hands did it take before I received it, and then I'm taking it up my nose. And so eventually I actually decided that it wasn't for me anymore. I became too energetically sensitive for it. And so I have stopped using the commercial type, but I do create my own. And it's actually quite an easy procedure to make your own. And we actually highly recommend that. If you're going to work with hape, actually make your own. With maybe the plants in your area, you obtain really beautiful organic tobacco. Maybe you grow your own tobacco, and it creates a stronger relationship when you just don't buy it off of a website. You've actually grown it, you've grown the plants, and you brought it together with your own prayer. So that's one way of working with tobacco, is through hape or rape.
And snuffs have been utilized, like tobacco snuffs have been worked with all over the world. There is actually really a popular way that tobacco, when it first hit Asia hundreds of years ago, was in a snuff form and was adopted into the different communities. Mongolian shamanism, China became very popular. But I think with this journey that Darcy is on, and then the creation of this hape and the relationship. And again, tobacco and all the master teacher plants keep pushing us to become more conscious, more responsible, and more aligned with everything that we're doing. And so this movement of, just seeing actually like when we were going down to Peru, which we bring groups to the Andes each year, and seeing there was no hape or rape around 20 years ago or 15 years ago. And about 10 years ago, there was a little bit. And then now when we go, it's like, there's just hape everywhere. And people are taking hape in the cafes, and people are doing it here and there. And when it is prepared with industrial intent to make money, I actually feel like I see more habit forming use, and you can become quite habit forming with hape. Staying in right relationship is really a part of having that be a powerful ally for transformation and healing. And also for the nasal applications, like that's real close to the blood-brain barrier. And there's a lot of things we don't want to put right up next to our blood-brain barrier and blow up our nose. So just to like plant that seed. Maybe another time we can do some form of teaching, or we teach in our plant spirit medicine apprenticeship program how to prepare hape, how to prepare also these other nasal applications, like singa, which is a medicine potion with tobacco that's prepared traditionally in the North Coast Washuma traditions. Is an inherent part of the ceremonies of healing with Washuma. In fact, it's very revered. The ceremony always has Washuma or San Pedro and Singa, or this tobacco potion. And they say that it's when the two spirits meet and merge within our bodies that they make love. And then the healing is their child. And so the healing we receive for the medicine is actually the child of these two sacred plant teachers coming together. And so Singa is another liquid tobacco potion that you take up your nose. And then in the Amazonian traditions, there's all sorts of nasal applications with a tobacco tea or tobacco juice. Now, the thing with nasal applications with tobacco, and then other lineages that also, like the dieta traditions of ayahuasca and the Amazon, is they'll make a tea to drink. Now, you want to be very careful about drinking tobacco tea. And in fact, you never want to drink tea made from tobacco that has any chemicals, because you can smoke a cigarette and you might feel a little bit sick. But if you make a tea from that cigarette, you're in the hospital. Best case scenario. It's so toxic. And so the tea and the application and the preparation is done by someone who's apprenticed with this plant for years and years, a tobaquera. I have a hard time saying that. And you want to be very careful with this. But all of these nasal applications are for clearing, purifying, and cleansing, as well as raising and lifting the energy field. And they're beautiful when done with strong prayer in a well-held container. But be wary of drinking tobacco tea. I would only drink tobacco tea with someone who is a true master and had like decades of experience with it, because it's purifying.
It's very purgative.
You're gonna most likely throw up. And also in the jungle, they do like enemas with tobacco tea. And that's we don't recommend ever doing that. The possibility of going into like actually getting nicotine poison is really high. And so that's something that people will do to cleanse. But aren't humans funny? We're just like, here's a plant. Let's see how many different places we can put it in our bodies and what happens. And just be conscious of that. Like wheatgrass is something people do that with too. And okay, I'm going off track. Darcy's like, wait, you're going off track. Enemas, conversation on enemas will get me off track. It's true. Yeah, you could go.
So in different areas of Colombia and Peru, they'll do tobacco paste that they'll make from mapacho, and they'll put it in their cheeks, called ambil. And that's a very strong way of bringing in tobacco. Burns a little bit, but has a strong effect. And then they're working with prayer. They're working with the spirit of tobacco.
When I first tried it, I was like, I think I'm gonna throw up now.
Yeah, it's quite strong. You can also, for plant baths, for, many of us really love plant baths for removing heavy energy. And so you can put a little bit of tobacco in your plant bath to call in that spirit of tobacco and then really ask for its cleansing presence. Also, poultices, there's traditions that work with poultices for drawing out toxicities and drawing out different forms of energy.
And also the poultices, it's best to not do this with green leaves because there can actually be lots of toxins in the green leaves. People who harvest a lot of tobacco can get, it's called like green leaf sickness because the hands can absorb so much of the alkaloids. So it's important to do dried tobacco and then they make a poultice or like a whole bunch of macerated plants. And it's especially good for joints where there's a lot of inflammation. So any place where there's a lot of inflammation in the body, you can actually apply poultices of tobacco. And I mean, there's other plants that feel really good, like mint and tobacco, and that can be really soothing to internal inflammation. And then, of course, on a spiritual level, whatever's connected to causing that inflammatory condition in the body. Yeah.
Can I go with flowers?
Yes.
Okay. And then lastly, a really very safe way of working with tobacco is working with the flower essence. So that's where you receive the flower from the plant and you put it into water under sunlight or moonlight, and then you take the essence of it. The water has the essence, and then you take drops of it, and it's just really good way of connecting to the higher vibrational levels and essence of the tobacco for spiritual connection and protection and grounding. So that's a great way. That's a great way.
Yeah, and I love the flower essence for anyone who's had a really strong habit with tobacco that has been destructive in your life, or there's a lot of people who've had family members who have had terrible relationships with tobacco, and there's even trauma around tobacco and tobacco smoke because we've seen people we love destroy themselves in part with that addiction. And so tobacco flower essence is a beautiful way to create a new connection and to still work with the spirit of the plant, receive the medicine teachings of the plant, and then bridge that spiritual healing, which is pretty much what all of us in the default world, dominant culture, those of us leaving the empire consciousness, we really need that help to reconnect to the spirit. So this is a beautiful way.
Yeah. And then I forgot to mention with mapacho, which is that really strong Amazonian tobacco, when it's used in ceremony, it's very protective. It's this is why most ceremonies will have some sort of tobacco or mapacho, because it's very cleansing for the space, removes negative energies. And then the stronger that you create relationship with mapacho, the stronger that energy is in the space, the presence of the mapacho. It's a really beautiful ceremonial plant. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then wonderfully enough, there's a big revival happening of ancestral tobacco seeds now. So for those of you who are looking to grow, to create this relationship and then to perhaps have the plants for your practice, there's wonderful online sources to find ancestral Aztec tobacco, Hopi tobacco, and seeds that have been regrown from ancient sources, from ancient burial sites, from ancient seed banks. And it's really quite a neat thing that's happening. A lot of people are growing tobacco. And what's neat, if I can just share this, is we have this tobacco plant here. It's not actually seeding yet, but you can kind of see we brought it in. Isn't she beautiful? Yay. And this one plant will create flowers with seeds. And like you'll get, I don't know, 5,000 tobacco seeds from one plant. So you buy one packet of seeds or have a friend who has it, And then be careful where you plant it and where you let it go to seed, because it's just going to grow and grow and grow forever wherever it seeds, which is cool. It's a really neat, like it's a very prosperous plant in that way. And whether you're in an apartment in the city or you're, anywhere in the world, really, you can grow this plant inside to start to develop this relationship. And I feel like we've gone on for a bit. I want to open it up now. That's a beginning teaching, within our Path of Soul Power Medicine and within our Plant Spirit Medicine apprenticeship program. We dive deep into this medicine, and many of our students are apprenticing directly to the spirit of tobacco through this container. And the beautiful teachings, transformation, and really the alchemy, the alchemical transformation of dense, heavy, energetic conditions through working with this plant is really what inspired this call, is that we're just seeing our students and really the students of the plants themselves, that we're all working together within this program, just blossoming. And it's actually been so powerful, and our relationship has been deepening so much in this container, even though we've been working with this plant for decades, that we are now having all of our new apprentices in the Path of Soul Power Medicine. They'll work with other teacher plants as well as apprenticing with the spirit of tobacco, because we really need to have this relationship in order to connect to all the ceremonial ways that are offered through the Pachacudi Mesa lineage, and also through the beautiful spirit of ceremony itself. Just to share that, and we'd love to open it up for some questions. In fact, I have not had it. We've been talking so much, we haven't seen the questions in the chat box. So maybe if you could, if anything we haven't covered in the call, if you'd like to type in a message, or you'd like to feel brave and unmute yourself, we're open to hearing your voice too and seeing your face.
Can I chime in quickly? I'm
Yeah.
about to drive off the ferry. Really grateful. Quick question. The nicotine patch healing for long COVID, I rang for me for Aaron because he's had this chest cough for 2 years since having COVID. And I'm curious if you know of anyone successfully having a particular dosage pattern of using, like how would one use the patch, or was even smoking a little bit of fresh, I don't know.
Yeah, we're not experts in that, so probably best to do some research and see what some of the research is saying of dosage.
Yeah, Dr. Ardis, ARDIS, has some information on that. Now, we are big fans of working with the whole plant, and so one of the ways that we have worked with it, and I've worked with it to treat viruses, is by making a tea that is with organic tobacco, either homegrown or bought, and making a pretty strong tea. And then actually with prayers and intention, then utilizing that tea in a neti pot. So I do add a little bit of sea salt, which is not traditional. I'm going to be honest, in the Amazon, they don't mix salt with the tea that they pour up their nose, but it burns so much. And when I was really not feeling well, like when you're really not feeling well, you don't want to have something burning up your nose. And then actually with prayer for exactly what the condition is that you're working with, and asking for the spirit of the plant, then to do a neti pot process. Try it for 5 to 7 days and see what shifts for you, whether it's you or anybody on this call. Because then again, you're getting the full spectrum of the beneficial alkaloids within the plant. And through nasal application, you're not going to drink too much or get, too much of the poisonous alkaloids. You're not going to overdose, but you might feel a little nauseous. You might feel a little woozy, and that's part of the cleansing process as well. So we definitely don't I actually have never tried nicotine patches or nicotine gum, so I can't speak to that personally. But I know there's a lot of people online who got a lot of information about that.
No, plant all the way for me. Thanks, guys. I might hang up, but thank you.
Okay,
And it
right
was nice
on.
to see the tobacco plant that I transplanted.
Cool, right on. Thanks,
Thanks,
Harmony.
Okay. Bye, guys.
There's a question here, recommendation for seeds. I'd research like some of these organic seed companies.
And native seeds.
Is that a company, Native Seeds?
There's native
Seeds.
seeds and yeah.
Yeah, and then just order it through them, and they usually have really good quality seeds.
Yeah. So finding places like this is where, you know, we really empower you to do that research solely because once you buy, like we bought our seeds years ago, and I think we've gotten them from a few different places, but then we just save our seeds every year, and then there's just more and more and more. So we haven't bought them for years, and we've actually have friends that pass new seeds, and we pass seeds amongst ourselves. So it's really really fun in that way. Yeah, okay. So let's see. So we have, thank you so much. I'm wondering if the process of making your own happy is difficult, and if you would be open to sharing the other plants you use for your own creation.
Yeah, so it's not too difficult. You know, I use a blend of my own tobacco that I've created or grown, as well as some Mayan tobacco and some Mapacho. And that's so the base. That's about 60%, 70% of it. And then about 20% of ash. So from sacred fire or you know, if you have other wood that would like to, other trees that want to be part of it, you can use their ash. So about 20 or 30% ash. And then about 10 or 20% other plants that usually really benign plants, you know, like that are okay to bring up nasally. So I've been using rose, mint, yarrow, motherwort, there's a plant on our property called Devil's Club or Spiky Club. We call it Spiky Club or Grandfather Club. And that's a really beautiful, powerful plant ally on our property that I just a little bit, you know, you don't want to bring in too much. It's that's a strong plant. And so really asking the plants of your garden or your area is like, you know, who would like to be part of this happy, and just really feel into who comes. And then just, you know, be careful, just like try a little bit, see how that works. And so I'd recommend you know, researching it, just seeing what you can find online, trying to find the highest quality tobacco that you can find, make your own ash. It's not super difficult. And I recommend that's what the type of happy you use. You don't use commercial happy.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I would love to just share about Darcy, like how Darcy went about this, because I just so deeply respected his process in this, is that it was like it's kind of a big deal, right? Like to receive the blessing from tobacco and the spirit of tobacco to create this medicine that is very purgative, that's very cleansing, that can be very harmonizing, aligning, that can be incredibly beneficial for dense and heavy energies and for clearing the primal meridian, which runs right here, which is where viruses, dense energy, foreign energies attached to our luminous field, as well as enter in Chinese medicine. They say viruses enter these back gates of the neck and back. There's acupuncture points where they enter. And so Darcy went through a 4-month process of communing, connecting, and praying and making offerings, like a couple weeks with each plant, slowly praying and asking for guidance and sanction. And really sanction as far as receiving the blessing, the permission, and the guidance from the plant spirit itself to work with it in this way. Now, sanction is something that is very emphasized in more traditional or ancient medicine practice, and is kind of lost in the diaspora of medicine work and the psychedelic renaissance, is that it's really important, and I highly recommend asking for the spirit's permission for all the work that you desire to do with it. And then from that place, listening with your heart and finding ways you can listen, and then developing your blend. One of our plant spirit medicine apprentices, she's created a Hape blend, and it's just with 2 plants. And both of those plants she's apprenticing to. And both of those plants she is working with very deeply. One is tobacco, and one is a plant called Wayusa, which is a dreaming plant from the Amazon. And so through a year process with that, she then created a Hape with tobacco in this very fine powdered form, which, I think Darcy does use a coffee grinder for that. It does seem to work really well. And then Wayusa ash. And so this depth of like connection, prayer, and consciousness is just something we can't emphasize enough. And then you're going to just co-create with the plants the most incredible medicine for yourself, and then waiting till you receive the sanction from the plants to offer it to another, because that's a really big deal energetically, and it's a really big responsibility. And so we only want to then offer any medicine that we've created or that we're aligned to once we have the permission of the plant spirits themselves, because then you have the full medicine power of the plants with you, versus kind of wondering and not being sure. And it can get a little bit weird when we're in doubt and confusion. So this level of clarity and alignment is helpful. And the last thing I'll just share around the Hape is it's important to do just some like basic research about the plants. There's some plants that are neurotoxic, and we do not want to put into our bodies in any way, like cedar. So it's important to not do an ash from cedar wood because it's neurotoxic. We create cedar baths, and we work with a cedar plant in smudges and baths and prayers, but you don't want to put cedar in your body, definitely not up your nose. And so just doing that research as far as like what is a neurotoxin and what actually could be a little beneficial, because it's kind of far out, right? Creating something to put up our nose. Does it work really well? It does, but it's still like a bit of a line. And so the Hape is beautiful. And I also have loved that Darcy has created that blend for us.
Yep. And I use a coffee grinder. You can use a mortar and pestle, but coffee grinder is much faster and it makes a better product, much more fine. So it's up to you. I actually find it's easy to bring prayers into the coffee grinder because it's going so fast. So like prayers are just going into it really fast too. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, we have one more question here. Maybe we're at our time of 7:30, but we'd like to take 1 or 2 more questions before we wrap it up. And so Ben says, what I took away from the perspective you shared, you wouldn't say that the spirit of tobacco assists those that aren't well-intentioned, but more amplifies unconscious distortions. Would that be more accurate? This is something I've been trying to understand after being alluded to a book that I listened to, that the spirit will work with those on both extremes of the polarity spectrum.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just amplifies your intentions either way. Good intentions, bad intentions. Yeah.
Yeah, like the plants are beyond polarity. They're beyond our ideas of good and bad and right and wrong. And they're here to help us to evolve our consciousness. And in evolving our consciousness, we are all in a soul growth maturation process. And so thank goodness the plants will help us even when we're really lost in separation and confusion, and we don't have the best intentions because we don't even know what that would be yet. They'll still help us. And also, as we are evolving ourselves, the more evolved we become, and Darcy and I always feel like I'm at the beginning. So in all humility and forgiveness for all the mistakes that I'm making along the way, that as we evolve more in our consciousness, then we can work with these plants for greater and greater healing and beautiful intention. The blessing, the infusing of life and good fortune, the purifying of distortion, the purifying of dense and heavy energies. But yes, all the plants, tobacco and all the plants will work with those good intentions and not so good intentions.
And the prayer can be as easy as, or as simple as, please help me. Please help me. It can just be that easy. I call in the highest medicine of this medicine, the highest vibration of this medicine. It's just that easy. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great question, reflection. And yeah, we also had Gabriella with a totally different question, which is, do you get these tiny little plants on your tobaccos? Sometimes we have gotten little tiny plants, but I don't know what they are. And I don't know too much about that. So just putting that out there. Thanks, Sal. And yeah, we are just about to wrap up. And what I would love to share is just a warm invitation for any of you who feel the call to work with the master teacher plants and develop direct relationship in a very empowered, clear, and supported way. We do have our upcoming The Path of Soul Power Medicine, Shamanic Leadership, and Plant Spirit Medicine apprenticeship program beginning at September equinox. And we are welcoming applications. And what we feel is so important to really emphasize is that we are co-creating the container with the plant spirit medicines and the lineage to create a space for you to directly apprentice to the plant spirits themselves. So in this apprenticeship program, as well as the Pachacudi Mesa apprenticeship program that we offer, we know that the apprenticeship isn't happening to us as human teachers. In fact, we are, at best mentors and guides and friends along the journey. That actually the apprenticeship is always directly to spirit, directly to the plant spirits themselves, through the vehicle of the lineage, and through the support, encouragement, cheerleading, and even accountability sometimes of the humans on the ground, which in this case are Darcy and I. And right now we have the most beautiful groups of human beings in this program with us. We have people of all different ages and backgrounds, everyone from nurses, medical doctors, counselors, chaplains, moms, dads, all sorts of body workers, all sorts of different backgrounds coming to directly learn from the plants so that they too may be of service in the future in this holistic and true path of medicine, which is also always a path of love, devotion, and reverence. We pray that this live call, this sharing, can inspire that spiritual connection and that conscious application and conscious alignment and working with this most powerful master teacher plant, sacred tobacco. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thanks for
Many
coming on the
blessings.
call.
And we will send an email out to everybody with this recording too. And for all those who might have missed it. Okay, maybe as we come out, if you want to, just for us, we could say goodbye together. You can kind of maybe as we pop off, just say goodbye, unmute yourself. It's just nice to hear other people's voices.
Goodbye, Darcy. Goodbye, Robert.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks much.
Goodbye.
See ya.
Thanks, guys. That was amazing. Thank
Till next
you.
time.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay.
See you
Aw, this
soon.
is so sweet.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
All right, cool. Thanks, Juan and Ala. That was awesome. Bye, baby Hockley and Mama. and Auntie. Oh, bye, Gabriella.
Good
Oh,
question.
yeah. Okay. Great. We'll be sending out some emails. Love you guys. Bye for now.